Hello and welcome back. Okay, you would have understood in the previous chapter concepts of variables, methods, and properties. To make it more clear and reinforce the concept that we have discussed, let us get into the hands-on and explore the concepts and discuss about creating a simple class and understand these concepts even better. So please ensure you complete this particular hands-on. In order to understand the methods, properties, instance variables of a particular class, let us create a sample class called car. So the day-to-day wherever we use a car, for example, so let us create a new car class to represent a car. Okay, I'll call a car class. So I've created a car class. So now let us look at what are the basic attributes of a class. So whenever look at a car class, for example, if you look at a car, so what are the things that would come to your mind? First is what is a make? Okay, so let us say I'll say private string make of the car. Okay, then you have model. So some of the basic attributes we could say. Okay, private string model, and then private string color of the car. Okay, so this is another thing that would come into picture. Okay, so these are the three elements which are sufficient for our discussion. We can go and add multiple elements. We don't need to really worry much about it. For the sake of this particular hands-on, let us take our car has three attributes. And then what are the other things that are required for a particular car? So a car contains a registration number. So let us say private string registration number. Okay, and now I have a modern car, something like a Genesis GV60, which was the first car to introduce a Face ID. So it basically helps to use the Face ID recognition and lock or unlock the car. So that's a simple example. So we could say private Face ID for, so how do I represent Face ID? I will just say unique string, some data which represents the Face ID data. So let's take a simple example. Okay, it can be any complex information. So just let's say it is just a token which recognizes the Face ID of a particular person. Okay, so this is the basic set of data which is representing my class. So we could say these are all the fields of my class. So if you just take a look at these particular variables, what comes to your mind in terms of the attributes which also have the getter and setter methods? So remember, we discussed the concept of properties in the previous chapter. So what are the properties that we have in a class are basically represented here. So there are 6 properties. So now pause this video, take a look at these particular variables or properties or attributes or fields of a particular class, and let us see if these properties are read only, read write, write only. So let us try to categorize them. Okay, so pause this video for some time, take a look at it, understand and guess what type of a property it should be. Okay, I hope you people got a chance to just think about the different types of properties that can be there here. So there are 6 properties. How do you categorize them in terms of read only, read write and write only properties? So let's take an example of make here. So make, so when you basically have a car, say you are buying a car from Kia, is a make, right? So who is the maker of the car? Kia. So it will not change. So once the car is created, you cannot convert a Kia car to a Maruti car. It does not make sense. So it is something which gets associated permanently with a particular car. So we could say this is kind of a read-only property. So you could see here, so read-only properties. Okay, so read-only property could be something like make Is there anything else? So we could also say we have model, which is also something, a Kia Sonet, for example. It cannot change, right? So model remains the same for the lifetime of the car, okay? And then color. Generally, we could say color is also a read only. Sometimes you could say if you change the car of the color, if you change the color of the car, my bad. Okay, so you see that the warranty could be void or something like that. So let us not get into that as of now. So let's assume color of the car is also kind of static for the lifetime of a particular car. Then we do have registration number. So think it over. Can you modify the registration number? Yes, right? Because when a car is manufactured, it comes with a temporary registration number. You may be aware of it. And then once you purchase the car, the dealer sends that particular car to the transport office, RTO, regional transport office, and get the car registered. So that gets a registration. So which means I should have an option to actually read the registration number of a car. So get the registration and also set the registration number. So which means it should be of read write property. So read write property example is registration number. Next, let us look at Face ID. So let us assume I have the modern car where it recognizes the Face ID and unlocks the door. And once it identifies that I'm out, so it locks the car. So I'm just giving an example which will come in future. All cars might have Face ID, just like how you have your phones today, your mobile phone having smartphones having Face ID. Same thing could be present for your car as well. So just take a simple example, or some passcode could be there also. So let's wait for some new technologies that come in with facial recognition. So let's assume that our car comes with a Face ID or a passcode or whatever you want to call. So now let us say I have Face ID or unlock ID or something like that. So unlock code, you could basically say, and this is more about write only property. Why it is write only? Because you can just update the Face ID, but you cannot read the Face ID. You cannot say get me the Face ID, or you can update the password. All right, you can set a passcode, but you cannot say give me the passcode, because anybody can get that and they can run away with your car. All right, so you should keep that in mind. So these are some of the examples of how you can categorize the attributes of a particular car or properties of a particular car or a class and take them into read only, read write, and write only properties. Now comes the question, how do I generate or create the methods? So I have the getter setter methods accordingly. So for read write method, so we do have a feature in IntelliJ where we can generate certain methods. So let us say I want to generate getter methods. So I want getter methods for make, model, and color. Okay, and also for registration number I require this particular thing, but for Face ID I don't need, so I can generate them. So see here, so it generates automatically for us, so I don't need to do anything extra. So next I want to generate, right? So I could say again generate setter method. Okay, so setter method is required for registration number and Face ID. Okay, I'm holding the control to select multiple elements here. You could also do that and then say okay. So you also have the registration number, set registration number, and set Face ID. So representing the read only properties, write only properties, as well as read write properties for my class. So this is a simple example of creating these properties. So now let us come to methods that are actually required. So let us have two basic methods for our car, which is turn on and turn off. So starting the car and stopping the car or turning off the engine is something which is important. So the basic method, so we need not get into all the details in this particular chapter. So let's just create a method. So public void turn on. This is a behavior. Okay, by the way, behavior or functionality of a car. So what is the use of a car which will not turn on, right? So say turn on. Okay. Now, then I'll also have a method void turn off, right? Okay, turn off. So when I say I want to represent some value, right? So when I say turn on, something should change. What should change? Registration number will not change, face ID will not change, or these properties will not change. Remember, this requires an instance variable. So I need a variable to represent the status of the car, whether it is on or off. Making sense? So it is not a property. Remember, when you go to a car website, you don't see car is turned on or turned off as a property. You would see the car make, car model, car color, etc. as attributes, and we require something like a simple variable. So it can be as simple as say private boolean car started. Okay, so let us say car started, and I would basically modify this to is equal to true, car started is equal to false. Making sense? So methods modify the instance variables, properties modify the variables, which we discussed in the previous chapter, and this is a simple example of this implementation. So this is a very simple way of doing this initialization. But there comes a question. So now let us see, we have this make, model, color, these are all read-only properties. Where do you initialize these read-only properties? So I want to create a car object, all right? I want to create an instance of a car. So where can I initialize what is a make, what is a model, what is a color? Because it's read-only, I cannot modify once it is created. So what is the only option? Constructor, right? So we can use constructor to create a car. So I can say public car, and it should take, okay, it should take, say, string. We could also generate. Okay, let us try generating this. Okay, right click and then say generate, and let's say I want to create a constructor. So here you also have an option to specify, so what are the properties, right? So make, model and color. Okay, and say okay. So this is there, and some temporary registration number could also be there. So maybe I could generate one, and let us use that for initialization. So let's say this dot registration number will have something like temporary registration number or something. If you want, you can also pass it on, but you can also make this as an example, saying that it initializes. So it is possible to initialize certain variables when you are creating. So the default initialization, this is also something there. And also one more important thing is we could say this dot, or even we could say car started is equal to false. So this is something which ensures that whenever you create a car, it will be stopped. It is not turned on by default. All right. So this is something which is an example of initializing the variables during the constructor, and also modifying these variables where using the set method and also other behaviors. So this gives an example where you have an option to differentiate between a normal method and a property. So wherever you see a get and set method in Java, remember it is nothing but a property, which means a property or a method which actually modifies some attributes or some fields associated with that particular object. As simple as that. And any other method like turn on, turn off are nothing but normal arbitrary methods which actually modify the internal state or internal instance variables, and that is what we see here. Car started is nothing but an instance variable which is associated with a particular car. So now let us quickly create a sample main program. So now let's say car driver. So let us create a main method and let's create a car. CAR, this is general practice. So you could also say CAB, anything for that matter, is equal to new car. So I would say new car, whether this will work or not. You see that there is an error. Remember, I was telling that when you don't have any constructor declared or defined in a particular class, a default constructor will be valid, which does not take any parameter. But once you create a new constructor with some parameters, then that will become the default constructor. So if you, or rather that will become the actual constructor for your class, and a default constructor which does not take any parameters will no more be valid. So you see this error. If you want, you can basically create an other constructor which does not take any parameters or which actually resembles a default constructor, and you can initialize with some values. But in our case, it does not make sense to give some name, some model for my car. So I want to mandate that whenever you create a car, you have to provide the details, so which is basically the make. So let's take an example. I would say make is say Kia, and then model is something, the next thing is model. So I would say Sonnet, okay, and then next I need a color. I'm just giving an example of a car which is basically created, and now I have an option to say car dot set face ID. So I'll say my face. I'm just giving an example. And then car dot set registration number. So I could say some number. So KA05 EEB2345 or something like that. Okay. So this is a simple example of initializing and setting up the car object. Okay, so now my car is ready to be started. So what would be the default state, whether car is on or not? So if you want to really get that information, I could also have a method called get car status to see whether it is on or off. Getting it? So that's an example we could say, but for now let us not worry about it. So let us say car turn on. So we could say I can also include some output here. So we could just sysout say car is started. Okay. Car is stopped. Okay, or turned off. Stopped and moving is a different, it's more different meaning. I could say turned on or turned on, turned off. So this is another example of how you can basically give this notification or give this information to the calling client. So car dot turn on. Now I want to know whether the car is on or off. So we could also say, let us implement one. I think that's interesting as well. Okay, so let us introduce one more method, public void check status. Okay, display status, like whether car is on or off. Okay, that's something which we could say. So here comes with a condition. So if car started, which is true, then we could say, remember the if statement, a very simple example. So we could say car is turned, car is on. Okay, else it's false, which means car is off. So this is what it will display. So display status, this is what we will see. A driver can see the car and get the information, right? So let us say after doing this, car dot display status, and then I'll turn on and car dot display status. Let us see whether my car turned on or not. All right. So let us run this program. Okay. Very simple but interesting facts that we basically unearthed in this particular example. So see here, so the car got created, so car is off and car is turned on. Now car is on. Yoo-hoo. So we created a very simple class which has instance variable, some properties, and also certain methods. So this gives you an understanding of how you can differentiate between these elements. Okay, so now it's your turn. So go to the resources section. I have a document which gives you some problem which you need to implement and understand these concepts in our hands-on exercise. So please ensure you complete this hands-on exercise and then come to the next chapter. Okay, thank you and see you in the next chapter.